There's a specific kind of person in this world. The kind of person who will stay awake until 3 a.m. comforting a friend who's falling apart, and then spend the next hour lying in bed wondering why nobody would ever do the same for them. The kind of person who remembers everyone's birthday, notices when someone is acting differently, checks in when others forget, and somehow still believes they don't deserve that same care in return. And if you're watching this video, there's a chance that person is you. What's strange about this isn't the kindness. It's the contradiction. How can someone who is so compassionate toward others be so cruel to themselves? How can a person who sees value in everyone else look in the mirror and see nothing worth loving? Most people assume these are two separate things. That kindness is one part of your personality, and self-hatred is another. But psychology suggests something far more uncomfortable. In many cases, they are actually the same mechanism. The same wound, just wearing different masks. Because for some people, kindness was never simply kindness. It was survival. Imagine growing up in a world where love didn't feel guaranteed. Where affection depended on how helpful you were. How quiet you stayed. How much emotional weight you could carry without complaining. You learn something very dangerous in environments like that. You learn that love isn't something you receive. It's something you earn. And the fastest way to earn it is to become useful. To become the person who gives. The person who fixes. The person who never asks for anything. Over time, this changes the way your brain understands relationships. Helping people no longer feels like a choice. It feels like a responsibility. Almost an obligation. Not because you want praise. But because somewhere deep inside, you've started believing that your value depends on what you can do for other people. Psychologists call this a negative self-schema. A deeply rooted belief that, somehow, you are less worthy than everyone else. And what's fascinating is that this belief doesn't make people colder. It often makes them kinder. Because if you secretly believe that you don't deserve love, the safest way to feel valuable is to become valuable to everyone else. So you become the emotional support system. The person everyone calls during a crisis. The friend who always listens. The one who notices everything. The one who carries everyone. And the heartbreaking part is, you're genuinely good at it. Because you've spent your entire life learning how to take care of everyone except yourself. There's something else that happens when you spend years believing your own needs don't matter. You become extraordinarily good at understanding everyone else's. Think about it. How many times have you known someone was upset before they even said a word? How many times have you walked into a room and immediately felt the emotional atmosphere shift? How many times have you noticed the tiny changes in someone's voice, their facial expression, the way they text, the way they avoid eye contact? People often call this emotional intelligence. And it is. But sometimes, emotional intelligence develops for a much sadder reason. Because when you grow up feeling responsible for other people's emotions, paying attention becomes a survival skill. You learn to read people because not reading them feels dangerous. You learn to anticipate needs before they're spoken. You learn to become whatever other people need you to be. And after years of doing this, something strange happens. You become an expert on everyone else's inner world. But a stranger to your own. That's why so many deeply kind people struggle when someone asks a simple question. What do you want? Because the truth is, they often don't know. Not because they don't have needs. but because they've spent so much of their lives suppressing those needs that they've lost access to them. And underneath all of this, there's usually a quiet fear. A fear that almost never gets spoken out loud. The fear that if people really knew who you were, without the kindness, without the helping, without the listening, without the giving, they wouldn't stay. So you keep giving. You keep showing up. You keep becoming indispensable. Because being needed feels safer than being loved. And this is where the pattern becomes difficult to recognize. Because self-hatred rarely sounds like, "I hate myself." Instead, it sounds like, "I'm just being realistic. I'm not that important. Other people deserve help more than I do. I don't need anything. I'm harder to love than most people." The tragedy is that these thoughts don't feel cruel. They feel true. And when something feels true for long enough, you stop questioning it. You build your entire identity around it. You become the reliable friend, the caretaker, the emotional support system, the person who remembers everyone else's pain while quietly ignoring their own. And the world rewards you for it. People call you selfless, kind, generous, amazing. But those compliments never fully land. Because somewhere deep inside, a different voice keeps whispering, "If I stopped giving, would anyone still stay?" And that question changes everything. There's a specific kind of grief that lives inside people like this. And the strange thing about grief is that you don't always realize you're carrying it. It's not the grief of losing someone. It's the grief of never fully having what you needed in the first place. The grief of learning, at a very young age, that your feelings were too much. Your needs were inconvenient. Your pain was something to hide. So you adapted. You became mature too early. Responsible too early. Understanding too early. You became the child who never caused problems. The friend who never asked for help. The adult who could survive almost anything. And people admire that. They call it strength. But what they don't see is the loneliness hidden underneath it. Because when you've spent your entire life earning love, unconditional love feels suspicious. When someone tries to care for you, you become uncomfortable. When someone offers help, you feel guilty. When someone says you deserve kindness, part of you immediately wants to argue. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because suffering feels familiar. And familiarity has a strange way of disguising itself as safety. This is why healing can feel so frightening. Not because you don't want to get better, but because getting better means giving up an identity you've spent your entire life building. The identity of the helper. The strong one. The person who expects nothing and gives everything. And if you stop being that person, who are you? Psychologists who study attachment and self-worth have found something profound. People who struggle with self-hatred often don't actually need more evidence that they're worthy. They need permission to stop proving that they are. Because the truth is, your value was never supposed to depend on how useful you are. You were never supposed to earn your right to exist. You were never supposed to spend your entire life auditioning for love. And maybe that's the hardest thing to accept. That the kindness you give so freely to everyone else was never something you had to deserve yourself. If you recognized yourself in this video, not just intellectually, but somewhere deeper, somewhere uncomfortable, then maybe this is the beginning of seeing the pattern for what it really is. Not proof that you're broken. Not proof that you're unlovable. But proof that you learned to survive in a way that protected you once. And what protected you then doesn't have to define you forever. Because one day, very slowly, and probably without even noticing it at first, you may discover something that changes everything. That you were never difficult to love. You were simply taught that you had to earn what should have been given freely. And the moment you stop trying to earn your place in your own story, is the moment you finally begin to live it.